I was lying in bed, my body intertwined with Thomas, my husband. His hands moved across my skin slowly, as if savoring every inch. The room was dimly lit, casting soft shadows over our bodies. I felt the familiar rhythm of his touch, the way he kissed my neck, the way he whispered my name like a secret. It was passionate, yet routine, a dance we had performed many times before. I loved him, truly, but there was a part of me that longed for something more, something I couldn't quite put into words. As we moved together, I closed my eyes and let myself get lost in the sensations, trying to ignore the nagging feeling in the back of my mind. It wasn't that our lovemaking lacked passion. It was that I felt a restlessness, a need for something different, something unknown. And perhaps Thomas felt it too, though he'd never say it out loud. When we finally collapsed into each other's arms, breathless and satisfied, he kissed my forehead and whispered, "I love you, Claire." "I love you too," I replied, but even as the words left my lips, I couldn't help but feel a pang of uncertainty. It was as if we were both trying to convince ourselves of a truth we no longer believed wholeheartedly. That night, we attended a party hosted by Richard, an old friend of Thomas. Richard was wealthy, enigmatic, the kind of man who made you feel like he knew everything about you just by looking into your eyes. The party was extravagant. Champagne, laughter, and elegant guests dressed in black tie and sparkling gowns. I felt a twinge of excitement mingled with something darker, a sense that the night held more than just social niceties. As Thomas mingled with the crowd, I noticed him speaking to a stunning woman I didn't recognize. She was tall, with a figure that seemed to demand attention, and the way they laughed together made my stomach twist. I wasn't the jealous type, but there was something in their interaction that felt different. Before I could dwell on it, Richard appeared beside me, his eyes gleaming with that familiar, almost predatory charm. He handed me a glass of champagne, leaning in closer than necessary. "You seem distracted tonight, Claire," he said, his voice low and intimate. I forced a smile, just enjoying the party. "Or perhaps looking for something you haven't found yet?" he suggested, his gaze lingering on me in a way that made me shiver. He slipped a small card into my hand, the kind you might receive at an exclusive club. It had an address and a time, midnight. No explanation, no details, just a knowing smile from Richard as he walked away, leaving me standing there with my heart racing. I glanced over at Thomas, still deep in conversation with the mystery woman. I decided not to tell him about the card. Instead, I slipped it into my purse and made an excuse to leave the party early. "I'm not feeling well," I told him, giving him a light kiss on the cheek. He barely acknowledged it, nodding as he continued laughing with his new friend. Outside, the night air was cold, sharp against my flushed skin. I hailed a cab and handed the driver the card. The address led us to a quiet, upscale neighborhood, far from the noise of the city. I felt a strange mix of fear and exhilaration bubbling inside me. What was I doing? Why was I here? But the truth was, I wanted to know what lay beyond the mundane routine of my life. The cab stopped in front of a grand old mansion, its exterior lit by soft golden lights. I hesitated before stepping out, feeling the thrill of stepping into the unknown. A man in a black mask opened the door, wordlessly handing me a velvet mask of my own. He nodded, as if he had been expecting me all along. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of incense and something more primal, desire. The main hall was filled with people in elaborate masks and robes, moving together like dancers in a forbidden waltz. It was a world I had never seen before, filled with whispers, laughter, and glances that lingered far too long. I wandered through the rooms, each one filled with a different kind of intimacy. In one, couples danced closed, their bodies pressed together in ways that felt almost indecent. In another, people lounged on velvet sofas, whispering secrets and exploring each other's bodies under the cover of darkness. And then I saw him, Thomas. My husband was standing in the corner, his mask hiding his face, but I knew it was him. He was with the woman from the party, her hands tracing patterns across his chest. My heart stopped for a moment, caught between shock and a strange, sick curiosity. He didn't know I was there. He didn't know I was part of this hidden world too. I stood there, hidden in the shadows, watching as the woman leaned in closer to Thomas, her hands trailing down his chest, trailing the lines of his suit. He didn't resist. In fact, he pulled her closer, his fingers tangling in her hair, as if he were drowning and she was the only thing keeping him afloat. My breath hitched and I couldn't look away. There was a raw, unrestrained desire in his movement, a side of him I had never seen before. It was both intoxicating and infuriating to watch, the way he kissed her, not with the practiced affection he showed me, but with a hunger that seemed almost primal. They moved together, lost in a dance that was as intimate as it was public. Her back arched as he pressed her against the wall, their bodies melding together like they were made for this. I could see the rise and fall of her chest, the way his hand slipped under the fabric of her dress, gripping her thigh with a possessiveness that made me shiver. It was a strange thrill, watching my husband with another woman. Part of me felt betrayed, yet another part was inexplicably aroused by the scene unfolding before me. It was like peering into a forbidden world, one where pleasure and pain were two sides of the same coin. I should have left. I should have turned away and fled the room, but instead, I found myself stepping closer, drawn to the heat of their bodies and the sounds of their muted moans. I felt the pull of the same dark energy that consumed them, a desire that made me ache in ways I hadn't felt in years. As I watched Thomas bury his face in the curve of her neck, biting gently, I realized I wasn't just an observer anymore. I was a part of this, complicit in their lust. I stepped back, slipping into the shadows, my heart pounding in my chest. The sight of Thomas with another woman should have devastated me, but instead, I felt a twisted thrill, as if I had stumbled upon a forbidden secret. It was betrayal, yes, but it was also a glimpse into a side of him I had never known. I made my way upstairs, needing to catch my breath. I found myself in a small room with a large mirror, I took off my mask and stared at my reflection. The woman looking back at me was different. Curious, daring, and somehow liberated by what she had seen. I realized then that I wasn't just here by accident. I wanted this. I wanted the unknown. The door creaked open, and Richard stepped inside, his mask gone. He looked at me with a mixture of amusement and something darker. "You weren't supposed to see this," he said softly. "Neither was Thomas," I replied, my voice surprisingly steady. He stepped closer, his eyes locked on mine. "You felt it tonight, haven't you? The freedom, the desire for something more." I nodded, unable to lie to him or to myself. He handed me a folded note, his fingers brushing mine in a way that sent a shiver down my spine. "This is your choice," he said. "If you leave now, you can pretend this never happened. But if you stay, nothing will ever be the same." I took the note, my hand trembling. I glanced back at the mirror one last time before putting on my mask and walking out. I could see Thomas searching the room below, as if he could sense I was there. I watched him for a moment before turning away, making my decision. I left the mansion, slipping back into the cold night. The cab ride home was silent, the city a blur outside the window. I still had the note in my hand. I didn't open it until I was back in our apartment, sitting alone in the dark. It read, "This is only the beginning." I tore it into pieces, but the words lingered in my mind, like an echo I couldn't escape. The next morning, Thomas kissed me on the forehead, acting as if nothing had happened. But everything had changed. We had crossed the line, and there was no going back.